and thank you for joining us on another episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I am your host, Sharifa Hardy, and do we have an amazing show for you today? I always discuss this. One of the things I am is definitely sexist. I don't know why, but I always talk about the men versus the women during my show. And what I found is the majority of my shows, 9 times out of 10, it is all women. And I've been told that's because the men don't want to talk. They don't want to share their feelings or what they're going through and discuss it. But today I have 4 gentlemen who came to the show to be able to help you. So what I want you to do is to go ahead and share this show. Let your friends know that we are on. We're answering your questions. We're providing you with tips, resources, and information. And you know that friends don't let friends miss out on the Roundtable Talk Show. So I want to go ahead and introduce my first guest. You may recognize him. You may recognize his name. You may recognize his face. He's been on the show before. But you may also remember that he provided tips and strategies on how to make more profit from your current traffic on your website. And then our first guest was so kind to work with me on my website, AskSharifa.com, so I can get more clients and more business from my current traffic. And I will have to let you know that it worked. So I want to introduce Mr. Howard Wolpoff, and he is from Profit Master Business Solutions. Good morning, Howard. How are you?
Good morning, Sharifa. How are you doing?
I am excellent. I'm excited to have you back on the show. We had so much fun the last time, and we learned a lot.
It was a really great experience that morning. Thank you again for having me.
You are so welcome. You know, I love the experience. I love the show. But I want to talk about after that, how we sat, we talked, we went through my website. You provided me some strategies that I implemented. I actually did the work myself and made the changes. And I will have you know that it has increased my sales, my profits, and my client base. One of the things that we talked about specifically was the header, above the fold, the top, some of the things that I can do. But before we get into that specifically, please, Howard, tell the people who you are, what you do, and maybe some of these strategies that they can implement.
Sure. Again, my name is Howard Wolpoff. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, but I really work around the country. I am a marketing strategist and business coach at Profit Master Business Solutions. And I work with small business owners to address their pain points and work with them to develop strategies that work for their business, to implement into finding new ways to create revenues, especially during this time where people are struggling and really need to make sure the revenues are coming into the business. Some of these are really simple to implement. And at the moment, a lot of it is dollars that people are leaving on the table. So it's always a welcome experience to have conversations with these business owners, because really given 45 minutes of their time, I can find ways to actually triple their leads, double their sales, and find anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 that without them spending additional dime in marketing or advertising.
Okay, I tell people, Howard, that, I'm not as young as I used to be, so my hearing isn't, as good as it used to be. But how much did you say that you can help people find?
Some people, it's in the range of 50,000. Some companies is really in the range of $100,000 that they're not accessing, just by putting in some simple strategies into their business, whether it's for their website and how they utilize it, whether it's their pricing or their the offerings that they have, and just strategies of really utilizing their networks.
And so this is without spending another dime, one more dime on additional advertising and marketing for their business.
Correct. These strategies won't have anyone spending additional money. Obviously, there are ways to advertise and market that you always can invest, and the goal of really getting revenue back for your investment, your return on investment. But a lot of these strategies are really just simple conversations and simple implementation.
You know what? If I hadn't seen it for myself, if I hadn't heard the last show, if I hadn't sat down with you for 45 minutes, I would honestly, Howard, to tell you the truth, I would be like, I can't believe it. Like, I just don't. And I don't want to sound like one of those get rich quick schemes or one of those late night infomercials that come on. But you gave me solid things that I can do to my website. things to change it, places to move information, where to put content from the existing traffic that really made a difference. One of the things that I did is I had a picture at the top and basically asked Sharifa, and we focused on key areas within my website for services that I wanted to focus on and highlight, so that when people came to my website, they clearly knew what I did, who I was, and where I wanted them to go. So it's existing traffic, but it's basically a new direction.
A lot of the problems that companies have is that their website is a digital brochure. That's all they use it as, is all it looks like. And some people will spend 10 seconds, 25 seconds on that brochure and go on to the next, unfortunately, go on to the next brochure. You need to figure out how to capture people's attention and make them stop. There's a conversation going on in their head, and if you can take part in that conversation, they're going to stay and learn more, because there's a problem they have they don't want and a result that they want that they don't have. Can you answer that? Then that's where things happen with the website, and having a headline and a subheadline talking to them about that issue that you were able to provide makes them stop, makes them think, makes them want to learn more.
Now, is this only a specific genre, specific industry? Does this only work for certain websites? Does it have to be a local business, national business? Are there any particular guidelines?
It really works for just about every business, even e-commerce, where your focus immediately starts on selling, but there's really has to have a conversation with some of these smaller e-commerce sites that are just launching. You really have to explain who you are. So people are not just going to buy your candles just because you've put it out there. But really, it's I think a lot of people have fallen into a trap of what websites should be. And a lot of it's because designers have a set way of websites they want to design and charge for. And as long as it looks pretty and you can get the liking of an owner, they're going to go build that website for you. But the website really has to show efficiencies. It really has to be your 24/7 salesperson. And if it's not doing that, it's really is not being effective for you.
Okay, so why not just go into website design, Howard?
Because they're professionals to do that. I can dabble in website editing, but in truth, I have a staff of website designers who do great things for my clients. So I trust them wholeheartedly, and we speak the same language. Thankfully, I can speak that language to be able to get what these business owners need.
I think that's very interesting, and we definitely have more questions. But what I want to introduce my next guest, and he is someone a little similar. He's someone who takes some other people through the process from beginning to end. I want to introduce Ken Carey, who is the co-founder and CEO, Executive Creative Director of Script to Screen. Good morning, Ken. How are you?
Good morning, Sharifa. How are you? And good morning, everybody else. Thank you.
Morning.
You are welcome. I am excited. I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. And, we were talking to Howard about the process, taking people through the process. And you do something similar with your business, which we're going to discuss and talk about. But first, tell us a little bit about from Script to Screen.
Well, Script to Screen is a direct-to-consumer agency where we take big brands, startups, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, all the way up to the largest brands in the world, and we create a direct-to-consumer channel for their business. So in this world today where, just because 70% of the distribution is gone, that doesn't mean 100% of the demand is not there. So we help companies diversify, if you will, their portfolio of bringing in new direct-to-consumer businesses. For example, one of our largest clients is Amazon, and we do work for Alexa, and we do work for Blink, and because they have their retail channels and they have their channels online, they still lose that data when they go to retail. They lose that data when they go to a third-party marketplace, and that's the key. And I think everybody here could relate, is that it's about owning the data of your consumer and how to serve them. So we create short-form commercials, medium-sized commercials. We create the whole strategy for television, digital, and radio, and podcasts, and even infomercials, as you said, Sharif. But we're not selling get-rich-quick schemes. I mean, we're selling product to the biggest brands in the world, and we're branding and we're selling and reoccurring income. So, you know, over the last 30 years we've been doing this, we've generated over $7 billion in sales for our clients around the world. And, you know, it all comes down to, and I love what Howard says, is if you can't get a consumer's attention, I don't care what you're selling, right? We just do it in a different way. I'm bringing them in through television and radio and podcasts. And then Howard's expertise is, you know, getting that consumer, once they get to that website, is going to convert them. And we have that whole digital team, what we do as well. But it's all about customer awareness, acquisition, and conversion. And that's what we do.
Oh, wow. Now that sounds exciting. So you deal with the big boys, the big guys, the Amazons and Alexas of the world. Mm-hmm. But most of our viewers, they're really not on that level yet. But most of them aspire to be. They want to be there. And I know with commercials and digital capital, that's not the word I was looking for, but right. Collateral was the word I was looking for.
The cost involved, right?
Yes, but with digital collateral, people don't know what to do. There are a lot of people who, because it's 2020, feel like they could just get their iPhone, you know, go out, shoot a commercial, put it up on their website, and I'm the next Amazon.
and everybody will come.
Yes, yes. Why? Or maybe not. Maybe you don't agree that every business needs a video or a commercial, but do you agree? I guess that is the question.
Well, you know, it depends on how you describe that. For a company that has a big marketing budget and is trying to build a direct-to-consumer channel because they have retail distribution and they have online marketplaces, yes, because that's where the masses are. That's where the eyeballs are. Mm-hmm. So, you know, there's this constant debate about, you know, are people not watching TV? Well, let me tell you something. Over 89 million households watch over 6 hours of TV a day. So, and it's only been growing over the last 3 months. But is it diversifying? Absolutely. It's diversified in OTT and all that kind of stuff. But to the point is, to your specific question is, you have to have some type of presentation of what you do, who you are, how you do it, and how you can help them. It doesn't matter if I'm selling. One of our other clients is Keurig, which is the coffee maker.
Ooh, right? I love Keurig. Tell them I said hi.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're Keurig or Amazon, or if you are somebody smaller who has, you know, like you said, selling candles. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to get people to understand what's different about you and your product. Mm-hmm. How are you going to solve their problem differently, maybe more efficiently, and what's the value you're going to bring to them? And then you can convert them. But if you can't do that, whether it's in a 15-second digital ad, and you don't need to spend a lot of money doing that, or it's a 30-second commercial, or it's an infomercial that, you know, our clients spend millions of dollars on those types of things. It really doesn't matter if you have no budget or $1 million budget. You still have to do the same things to get someone's attention, to explain what you do, to differentiate yourself from your competition. And I always say demonstrate. You have to demonstrate why you do what you do that's better than the other person. And there's a whole litany of strategy. And this isn't, please, this is not a promotion, but I wrote a book last year called This Works Marketing, and it's on the 13 actual strategies that we use for the biggest brands in the world, all the way. And you can use these whether you have a yoga studio, whether you're selling candles, or whether you have a $10 million budget and trying to sell Alexas to the world. It does not matter. If you do these 12 strategies, you can build a communication that will attract customers and convert them. And then most importantly is own that data so you can remarket to them after you've built trust with a great product. And now you have this reoccurring revenue where you're not spending a lot of dollars trying to bring more people in. And that's the ultimate goal today, is how do we get customers now that know, like, and trust us, and then that we can continue to ask them what their needs are so we can serve them with products and services that we have, versus just trying to, you know, keep going out there with the marathon, trying to find more and more people, which is important. But I always say that, you know, the riches are in the niches. If you can have a niche of people The riches are there if you listen to what they say and you serve them.
I think that was a wonderful answer, Ken. But like my notepad is ready. I need those strategies, at least a couple of strategies. Like I gotta change my life.
Okay. So first thing is I have to get your attention. If I can't get your attention, I can't sell you anything. The next thing you have to do is you have to understand what the person's problem. You have to expose the problem that they're having. Okay. Now let me give an example with Keurig. What's the problem that Keurig had? The problem that Keurig had was people didn't think that this little electric brewer and his pods could make great coffee. There was a myth to that. So we had to dispose of that. So we recognized the problem, then we offered the solution. The solution was actually, it's a very technological solution in a Keurig coffee maker, and how the machine works and how water goes through the K-cup. There's actually a real good story there. So you tell the story of that solution, you tell why you're different. So it's get my attention, what's your problem, here's the solution, how am I different, okay? And then how are you going to validate that? Who's gonna validate that? Well, the best person to validate anything are your happy customers. Let me tell you something. Your happy customers are the best salesperson in the building or anything that you can do. How do you tap into them is a whole nother strategy, but you let them sell for you. And then like I said, you demonstrate the problem. And then once you have validation, now you have to create value, right? So I'm taking you down this ladder of now what's the value to that? The value to that in the case of Keurig is, I can go spend hundreds of dollars over 3 months at a $5 latte a day. That adds up real fast. Or I can buy a Keurig machine and I can deliver that Keurig machine to your home for free. Mm-hmm. And of course, what their goal is to create that consumption because they have K-cups, right? To get that customer and to get them to continue to order. So once I have created a lot of value saying, listen, you can spend $500 a year on this, or you can spend $129 on this, right?
Right. But that's great. But also the point is, if you have an office full of people, one of the reasons that I love Keurig is most of the time when you go to the office, you make what? One pot of coffee. And then everyone in the office has to drink that pot of coffee. And it's like, what if I don't want that pot of coffee, or I don't want that flavor just because Bob wants that flavor? But with the Keurig, now you have the individual pods, and each pod has different flavors. And so you can make an individual cup without having to be concerned about everyone in the entire office being unhappy or happy.
Exactly. And that's one of the messages in terms of why we're different and a pain point that people have, because just like yourself, people think that way. And we had to change that perception, that myth. We had the paradigm shift of, well, I don't want, French roast. I want whatever. Now I can do that in a K-cup. So yes, it gives you the ability to tell those multiple stories. And then once you've created that value, then you have to create some urgency. Like, why do I want to have this now? Why do I want to get this Keurig now when I can just wait and go to Target? Well, I'm going to give you a special price. I'm going to give you, maybe take off a payment. And I'm even going to maybe give you a month's free of K-cups to get you started that you can't get anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So I've created that urgency, and hopefully that was compelling to you. And then you're going to take action on that. So those are the strategies that you go through. And like I said, it doesn't matter if it's Keurig or if it is you're selling your services as a consultant. What is it that you do? How do you grab their attention? What's the problem people have? How are you solving? What's unique about what you do? How are you going to demonstrate it? Who's going to validate it? What's the value you're going to offer? And then what's the call to action? It's really, I say it's that simple because it gets pretty convoluted, but psychologically, through the selling process, that's what has to happen. And we have perfected, well, excuse the term perfected. We've been very blessed and been very successful with a lot of clients around the world. And the strategy works for, like I said, a startup all the way to the biggest brands in the world. And like I said, to your audience, Sharif, where you're saying they're not to that level, It doesn't matter. The only difference is the zeros behind what you're paying somebody. That's the only difference.
Yes, thank you, Kent. So many questions for you, but you keep mentioning startups, and we have that discussion. So I want to introduce our next guest, who his specialty, his focus, his passion is tech and startup. He is the founder of Tech and Startup, Mr. Alex Solinsky. Good morning, Alex. How are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am wonderful. Are you enjoying the discussion?
I'm enjoying it so much. I've been taking notes. I don't know if you see me with my head down. I got my pen here.
I got my pen in my notes. This is what I do every day. I ask all the smart people, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then it kind of works.
I like that. That's a big part of what we do with tech and startups. So we're a growth network and consultancy. So you can work with us in two different levels. On the level of joining a network of your peers, where we have our YouTube channel, our podcast. We just put up our panel discussion on hiring with diversity in mind and all the benefits of that, of having people from different backgrounds and experiences. And I'll tell you, I am an expert in expanding technology teams in a smart way, not necessarily an expert in diversity. So we had anti-racist practitioners, we have diversity consultants, and a handful of people from the software development world all together. So just like you, I like to curate expertise rather than pretend I have it all.
That's what successful people do. That's what I'm told, at least. You know, the top-notch people, they say, I may not know it all, but I have brought in the top people who know what they know.
I don't know. We'll find out.
Absolutely. So what have you been going through over the last 3 months, Alex, with your business? I know businesses have been up, down, they've been changing, slow, you know, some in this quarantine, they've been wildly successful, like companies like Zoom, where then you have other companies who have struggled to remain in business or are no longer in business. What have you seen for your company and your clients?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, people have been more accepting of the things that I generally advocate for, which is that great talent can be found in a lot of places. So sometimes we want to go to, I want to go get my person from whatever big name software development school or business school. And I've always said, well, you know, that's not where the bargains are. You know, the bargains are in being willing to work with people who might not be in the same city your office is in, to work with people who might not have a big name degree. But if you can work with them and check their portfolios and have a conversation with them and see that the work that they have done looks a lot like the work that you want to do, you get some real bargains that way. But there's been a reluctance to work on remote teams. And so now there's no choice. I'm also seeing, I talk a lot to incubators and venture capitalists and accelerators, even co-working spaces. And these are people who help build up founders, but they relied on physical spaces to do it. And so now they're thinking, how am I going to keep my customers? So we've been doing a lot of programming around online co-working. So that's accountability, that's masterminding, that's all the benefits of focusing on my work in the company of others, and then even having that serendipity of meeting somebody that you used to having when you bump into them over at the Keurig coffee machine.
Nice plug right there for Keurig. You bump into them at the Keurig coffee machine. I love it. You can work Keurig into any conversation. You know, that's like one of the job questions before you ask. You're in the interview process and they're like, okay, do you have any questions before we hire you? And it's like, do you have a Keurig? Like, I need to know. We've been having such a wonderful conversation. I want to bring in our next guest. He is the founder of Swenson He, Mr. Chao He. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you for having me this morning.
You are so welcome. Are you enjoying the conversation?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I want to know, do you have any thoughts on any of the statements any of the prior guests made?
I wholeheartedly agree with, there's oftentimes, you know, like when you're listening to something like this, and you know, you've got your notepad out and you're writing everything down, you know, it almost seems like everything is, you just want to go off and try it. I think what I would say is, you know, in my experience, there's, you know, many different ways to skin a cat. And I think every piece of information that, you know, that I've heard, definitely applies in some situation, in some, someone's particular arena. And, I think oftentimes it's not necessarily about, because, all these things that make sense, you have to capture people's attention. You have to be in the right spot at the right time. The fundamentals, they're pretty straightforward. I think, as with most things in life, it's when you get down into the weeds, in what situation do you apply what particular framework? In my world, there's 15, 20 different ways to write one piece of code. And there's no manual for, when you have a custom piece of software and you run into this exact situation, you effectively ask the experts. A lot of people get very daunted by software, even if you're not the one writing the code, but if you're the one purchasing the custom software solution. It can be a daunting experience to go through the sort of exploration and the explanations from the vendor of, what do you actually need to do in this situation. And so what ends up happening when you ask the expert is that the expert, they've been there before and they've done that and they've seen in your particular situation, what piece fits. And so I think, everything that we've been saying, it all boils down to the fundamentals. And then in particular situations, it's about, which piece of advice, which, strategy, whether it's, take, for example, your Keurig, it's Keurig certainly
I think we're going to just offer this entire show to Keurig. We just send it over to them. This is the Keurig show. Sorry, go ahead, Chao.
What I was going to say was, if you're like a commercial landlord and you're trying to decide how to outfit your kitchenettes, Keurigs might make sense for small and medium-sized businesses. But, if you have a gigantic warehouse with 10,000 people working in it on a factory line, it just, wouldn't make any sense at all. So certainly, the fundamentals are there. You have to provide employee benefits. You have to provide an environment to nurture and grow your employees. But it does depend on what situation you're in. So I guess, from what I'm hearing, all of these fundamentals, they work in a vacuum. But the important thing is figuring out what niche this is, what situation you're even talking about. And that's a lot of what my business does. I guess we didn't really go too much into the details there at first, but that is,
we'll get into the details. I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts specifically on what people had to say. But I tell you right now, Chao, with 10,000 people, with 50,000 people, I want my Keurig. Let's get back to the Keurig, right? Because it doesn't matter how many people you have or how many employees you have, you still have to section them off into break room. And so you could have a Keurig per break room. There are larger Keurigs, there are smaller Keurigs, but I think where there's a Keurig, there's a way.
I would agree with that.
Thus, your affiliate job is done.
I'm going to get paid for this show. If no other show, I'm going to call Keurig and be like, I just spent an hour telling people about you, okay? I want to be your national spokesperson. That's what I want.
I'll put you in touch with some people.
I got some people too. Let your people talk to my people. But I just had to tell them there's always room for a Keurig. Child, I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm just teasing you. You know what I mean? We have fun. That's why I get up in the morning, to bring laughter to the world. But tell us a little bit about Swenson He, your business, and actually what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my business was founded about 6 years ago. My business partner and I, we actually met at MIT. We're nerds.
I heard of that. I heard of that school.
So we started as a pure software development firm. The very sort of, the first year or so, we kind of, we had a bunch of inbound work from people that just wanted random pieces of software built, whether it was mobile apps, their enterprise backend systems. It's pretty easy to, sort of put software in a box and say, just deal with the software guys, just give it to them and they'll figure something out. And so we sort of were that software box for a number of years. Since then, it's sort of evolved into a more full services agency. We incorporate some of the things that some of the other panelists have talked about, whether it's the digital marketing. So we'll help with some of your product strategy, and after you actually have a product to market, how to figure out where you want to spend your advertising dollars, how are you going to capture consumers and stuff. So we do a little bit of that sort of advising. We're not the experts. And so, if and when it makes sense to, we will bring in partners, like some of the other panelists, to work on that piece of the project. But even just knowing that that is something that you have to do is part of our value add, because a lot of times clients will come to us and say, hey, we want X, Y, and Z done in our mobile app. And then, we'll just take it from there and we'll figure out what to do with it. And oftentimes, they put it out there, they throw out a couple of Google ads, and then, expect the customers to come and then wonder why, 2 months down the road, they haven't seen the 100x growth that everyone else is seeing, or that, the top examples have seen before. So a lot of times it's about, knowing what goes on behind the scenes, because especially for mobile apps, everyone sort of has this image that you just, you get your app done, it goes viral, everyone downloads it from the store, and then, you start profiting. And that's not the case. There's a lot of work that goes into upfront designing the product. First of all, figuring out your product market fit. How do you even take a sort of wild conglomeration of features and combine them in a way that is compelling, as a package? It's not throwing the whole kitchen sink at the problem on day one. And so that, let's talk about fundamentals, right? In app design, you have to identify, what is the pain point of a user's life that you are removing by providing them with this mobile app solution. And so oftentimes, it's not, hey, I need just a gigantic dashboard and screens of settings and stuff and being able to control everything from my app. That's not the point of a mobile app. And so when it comes to designing an app, if that is the approach that you're going to take, you're going to fail, because you might have every feature checked, your whole scope document has checkboxes because everything is done and QA'd and stuff. But when you get the product out there and it's impossible for a user to figure out how to use it without first studying the code base, then you're in a world of hurt, right? And so we try to help our clients avoid that, because inevitably during the process, they'll say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if X feature did Y and Z, and just keep trying to tack on features and features. And that what we call scope creep. It happens every time with even the
like
best
that. I got to take that term. I've never used that term, but people do that all the time. And I think in a lot of different industries. I'm gonna steal that from you, okay? Down to scope creep. And people do it to me with consulting, because they hire me for a specific reason, and then I look around and I'm like, okay, how did I get in charge or be responsible in doing all of this additional work? So I need to figure out on how to avoid scope creep. Anybody? Alex, Ken, how do we avoid scope creep?
Yeah.
Pricing structure. Change your pricing structure.
That's what I do.
That'll alleviate it.
That's actually what I do.
Good.
I got to figure out other ways. Alex?
Force it.
I think one thing Chao brings up, which is funny, is anytime you hear a sentence that starts with "Wouldn't it be cool if," something that's not happening. So that's one thing. We think about that a lot, and it is usually a conversation of, in the very beginning with a contract, we'll set it up and we'll say, hey, we agreed on these milestones. And the milestone is very specific. When you do X, then this Y happens, or there's this result, and if it's the document is 9 pages. If it's a website, it's got this many. Whatever it is, you're really clear on what the result is. And then you say, hey, I can make an edit to what I've done. I can do 1 or 2 rounds of editing. That's included in the contract. And then when they say, well, it'd be really cool if we added this, you say, oh yeah, I guess that would be really cool. Let me go ahead and talk to you about that so I can make a change order for you to buy. That's a way to do it. So you set up the frame up front. This is the scope. This is what we're going to do. And I'm willing to edit through that 1 time or 2 times with you. And then we're done with this contract. I'm happy to make a new contract.
I love you spin things in such a positive way. But when you're spinning it, I hear the dollar signs. It's like change order. Okay, that's additional 5,000. Like but
Pretty
it's still,
self-explanatory.
yes, but you say it with a smile.
Of course, because it's a favor. I'm happy to provide this service. I love working with the people I work with. So it's easy to smile at the people because I don't work with people I don't want to work with. So that I can smile at them. That's not a problem. And then I really am happy to do that work. I can't do it in the contract that we have. That's all.
Oh, yes, you got that facial expressions that tell I'm in pain. I would really love to do this for you, but unfortunately, I can't do it under the current contract. I'm taking notes. I'm going to write down that line. Howard, has anyone tried to creep you?
That on Friday. Actually
on Friday?
happened. I have a client, and she's really great, and but asked for a little bit more, and it's a challenge to get. You don't want to offend the person in doing that. Sometimes they have their own assumptions, even though things are written in stone of what the contract is, and it's about nurturing that relationship so that everything is on the positive, and hopefully we will come to the right resolution with any issue that comes up within these types of conversations. And on our end, obviously, hopefully it ends up being a secondary contract.
I like that. More work, long-term work, long-term business relationships. That's what I like. That's what I look forward to, which is one of the reasons I love working with you, Howard. Ken, I wanted to ask you a question. I want to go back to these long forms and short forms. Being in the entertainment industry, the company that took public was a television studio. So we spent a lot of time creating long form and short form advertising for the company, especially to be able to move the stock. So it was a process that I'm very familiar with, and I began to see certain trends as far as the ones that were more successful as opposed to the ones that like these didn't work. One of the things that I noticed, even though they were long form, short forms, the harder sell ones didn't do as well as more of the informative ones. One of the things that I've seen over the last 3 or 4 months is that companies switched from a hard sell, buy my product, get it now, you have to have this, to we're here to help you. We're here to serve you. Let us, that kind of tone in the messaging. Is that just my imagination, or did you see that as well?
No, it's not your imagination, because our economy, just psychologically, our economy has changed over the last 10 years to reality is that, people don't really want to be sold to. They want to be provided information to solve their problem. And I believe, and I'm with you on that, is the harder you grab them by the ankles and start shaking their money out, the more, right, the more diverse and people are going to be. So let's break down the word infomercial. Infomercial is information commercial, right? It's not commercial info. So you're providing information, but once you provided that information, you have to do something to sell what you're doing. So yes, the more information you can provide, the more validity to what you're saying, the more backup, the more statistics, studies, all that kind of stuff, the more information you give, the better the sale is going to be. Because this reality is we live in a review-based economy. If I want to check out anything, I go right on and I go get a review. So I'm going to listen to those reviews. So what are those reviews doing? They're informing me on what people like and what they don't like. So it would not be prudent not to pay attention to the way the consumers are acting today. So we have totally segued that thinking into what we're doing, because the reality is, first and foremost, you have to have, when you're spending a lot of money on television and radio and digital and podcasts and things like that, the most important thing is you have a product that has mass appeal. Okay? Because you're spending so much money, because you're getting so many eyeballs, you have to have mass appeal. Now, if you want to get really niche with something, that's a totally different strategy. So once you have mass appeal and you can serve and you can solve the problems of those people who have mass, like Mass appeal is people love coffee. Mass appeal is people like security in their home with a product like blank. Mass appeal is some people like information technology like an Alexa or whatever to that point. That is mass appeal. A lot of people can utilize it. Can you give them information to understand why they need it, why they want it, why it's going to make their life better? So you recognize what I said is why they need it, why they can recognize and make their life better, not I'm going to sell it to you and get as much money as I possibly can. You know what? If I put up a really good presentation and I've given you a lot of information to think about and I give you a call to action, I haven't sold you. I've given you enough information so you make the decision yourself. But as a smart marketer, I'm going to retarget. I'm going to keep coming at you if I didn't get you the first time. But yes, absolutely, Sharif. It's just the psychology of the way people are making decisions today. And selling hard is this is a childish word, but it's icky. People don't like it. It turns people off. And you don't have to. You really don't have to be successful. You have to be consistent is what you need to be.
Yes, I love it. I want to ask you the same question, Howard. In your messaging with your clients, have you seen a change in the type of messaging from hardcore, sales to softer, I want to help you, be of service. These are the resources I have available to you?
I think in general now, especially the last 3 months, absolutely everything is soft. Everything is how can I help as opposed to how can I serve or how can I provide you with something. Those pieces kind of follow through after the fact. A lot of people that I've worked with have found ways to become resources, whether on their own or being guests on different podcasts and utilizing that in social media. Even an owner of a storefront or a home improvement company has answers that, especially home improvement companies have answers on how to clean your house and make sure everything is disinfected the right way. And they've gone on and made little videos and gone on to YouTube and pushed out, even if they're not spending money on advertising. I have a friend who works a advertising agency here in Jacksonville, who was offering to create videos for companies and got on one of the local TV stations and made a deal for the first 10 people that responded, and one person getting bonus X and the 9 people getting bonus Y. Those that really found ways to extend themselves have really taken a step up in this process, because there are bumps in the road that are going to happen. We're seeing now here in Florida, they started to open everything up and then had issues in the bars and restaurants, and now they're closing things back down. And but what's
going on down there in John? I didn't mean to cut you off, Howard, but what is going down there in Florida? I'm in here in Southern California. I watched Jacksonville. They didn't want to close down the beaches. They left them open for spring break. Then they wanted to open up. What is going on over there, Howard?
The funny thing is, the video shown around the country about Florida opening those beaches was actually from California, but that's a whole other story.
Don't break my heart. Don't break my heart.
And it was footage. It wasn't live footage. It was just what they had to use.
Right.
But it really has happened over the course of on this tangent. It's happened over the course since really Memorial Day, and it's the younger people going out to the bars and the restaurants who've then shared it with everyone, not just here in Florida. In Texas, there are some really heartbreaking stories of a family of 28 people who've come down with it because of different celebrations they had, and younger people bringing the virus into the house. So it's again, anyone listening, wear a mask and social distance. That's the best way to address this right now. But again, everything goes back to, I see there's 2 key words that have been going on right now. It's pivot and communication. If you're able to successfully pivot, whether it's major strategy or even small strategy, people selling online that never sold before, and now they're making money online. That was a significant pivot for them. But it's also, how do you communicate it with your customers, with your prospect base, and whether that's through mass media and commercials in doing so, or the way you do it, your emails out, or some people really have had a list and never utilized it and starting to utilize this email list to communicate with their customers. People just want to know what's going on. And that will help. It may not bring $1 in today, but may bring $10 in tomorrow or the next week.
Absolutely, Howard.
Yes, I love that you plan for the long-term strategy. Chao, did you do a pivot? Did your company pivot during this quarantine?
We have, but I don't, not in the way that I think. Actually, I was going to piggyback off of something that Howard said. I'll get to like sort of how my business has changed, but one of the things that most of our sales activity or that we think about, on the, I guess on my business side is B2B, right? We're trying to help other businesses with their software solutions. And I think one of the things that actually piqued my interest about this previous part of the discussion was, in fact, on a call yesterday, a discovery call, brand new discovery call with a potential client. If you had listened in 5 or 6 years ago, the words that would have been high performance, it would have been things like knowledge, expertise, that sort of sell. Like we're selling. This is what we're going to sell you. On our process. And I think yesterday, if you just had this, like, those sort of word orbs or whatever, like the charts that just kind of show the words and the frequency they were used, yesterday was a whole lot more about, things like talking about success and partnership. And I think that actually is one of the things that, we've been working on for a while. I think in terms of change in our business. Certainly during quarantine, there's the process related stuff like, going remote, which that could be its whole entire segment of how do you work remotely and maintain a sort of employee culture. But I think in terms of how we're positioning ourselves externally, the largest change has actually been that during this whole process, you can't necessarily have a client come into your office, and sit down at your conference table, shake hands. No one's shaking hands anymore, and I don't know if anyone ever will, at least not for a while. It's all the elbow bump, right? But shake a hand and look someone in the eye and say, like, hey, we're here for you. And that sort of communication of we're here for you, we're going to be partners of this, is done. At times, it's done subconsciously, right? Like you don't necessarily say that all the time, and I think especially with these Zoom calls. Yesterday, I think the discovery call was done by on the potential client side. They were taking the call while walking their dog or something, and just they were trying to get out of the house. But they were focused on something else. We couldn't really see them, and so we had to really articulate this point of what we don't consider our project to be successful unless you're successful, right? And so we're talking about this is. I mean, they're a relatively successful company. They don't really have much of a digital footprint. It's all, they were selling essentially, overstock produce to local markets and restaurants. And I mean, restaurants have gotten hit really, really hard. And so they're trying to pivot into how do we, provide some of this overstock direct to consumer. And so our sort of pitch on that was, when we talk about something like a pitch, right? Originally, it would have been, if you had looked at the word chart from 6 months ago, it's, for X number of dollars, you can have Y number of features and within Z months, and then you can go and, sort of like go from there. And yesterday, it was a whole lot more about, hey, let's take this incrementally, right? Let's first do a really small pilot project where we really dive into some of the customer metrics, who's going to be your target audience, how do they discover solutions like this, and then let's try something out, right? Let's do an A/B test of either a web-based or an app-based portal. It doesn't have to be fully featured. We're just trying to collect some data on where then do we want to invest in the next phase, and at the end of the day, we're not going to be satisfied and we're not going to be happy with this project unless you're successful. So it's not even about whether you're going to pay us the money to do the services. It's about, if you're going to be successful, that means you're going to be coming back for more and more and more afterwards, right? So we're not going to pitch you the $500,000 deal up front. We're going to pitch you the $50,000 deal to then hope for the 100, and then the 200, and then the 500, and then the million. And so that's a lot of what we're shifting and seeing in this sort of new COVID space, and this distributed sales environment is that it's not about putting your sort of best package on the table and then just hoping that someone will come along and pick up that package. It's about making that, which is certainly harder nowadays, especially in the B2B, when you used to be able to have these conferences, shake hands, go out to dinner, sort of do that kind of wine and dine situation. Whereas now everything is
everything is changing. Changing. These times, they are a changing. I love that. Alex, you had something for us.
Follow-up question. Actually, I just struck me when Chao talked about, we want to come not with the very best thing that we can do, the very best package, but sometimes the smallest, maybe most introductory, maybe cheapest package. And I'm just curious to hear more. I've heard that idea recently a couple of times, and I haven't interacted with it much. So I'm curious to hear more about that idea of, I might not bring to my prospective client the very best thing they can have. I might instead bring the smallest thing that I can offer them. And I'd just like to hear more about that from the panelists.
I'd like to chime in on that, Alex. And I think what Chao's saying is absolutely right. And I take that away and I go, we do the same thing. And what we're communicating is we're going to invest in your business. We're going to invest in your success. Now, and you're building that trust of, hey, if we can get to point A, then it makes sense to go to point B. So I think specifically to your question, Alex, is that if you can put up a structure where you say, listen, we want to get exactly what Chao was saying. Let's get to this point here. And if we have decided together that this is going to be the best for what is the right thing to do first, building block, and you execute on it, and that's a whole nother topic on execution, right? But we execute on it. Now what have I done? I have built trust with that client. They believe I'm invested in their business. They're going to do whatever work. So the pocketbooks open up pretty easily after that, because we got us to this point, it makes a lot of sense, and then we can go to the next step. The only thing I would say, Alex, is you need to protect yourself from A to B. Mm-hmm. So you have to put out some kind of agreement that says, when we get you to A, we're working together to get to B. Because we've all been in that situation where we've helped people and they've got it all figured out and they go to somewhere else and someone else blows it and they've blown their money and they come back to you and they have no budget.
Right.
So I would suggest that let's go here, lay out the parameters of what we're going to try to do. Let's execute on it. Let's bring the data in and prove that we did what we did. And now let's go to point B. And when that happens, there is just a relationship. There's a camaraderie that you built, and they know that you're invested in their business. And you are. It's just, it's a little bit more on the surface apparent.
Yes. I think the other thing with the whole A to B aspect that you mentioned, Ken, that stood out to me is to do it with a plan in mind, with the understanding that we are not only going to B, but that we are going to Z, like we're going all the way. So often what happens is we go to A, we get to A, and we stay at A, so we're offering them that smaller package, but but you want to upgrade and evolve and move forward with them. I've had a very interesting conversation today. I've learned a lot from you gentlemen, took plenty of notes. I've learned some cool words and strategies from Chao. That was amazing. We are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests to speak directly to the audience and let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance. And we're going to start with you, Alex.
Thank you so much. Oh gosh, I'm just deciding all the things I want to say. I'm still taking in the wisdom from Ken and from you and from Chao and Howard. So I think one thing that occurs to me that's important is, so I'm in the world of technology, and that often people think about, and Chao kind of said, nerds or whatever. My world is about 10 or 20% technology. As I work with leaders of teams, of companies, the technology is the baseline. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. A lot of what becomes important is discovering what's the actual emotional resistance to figuring out what the next step is. People get stuck. In fact, 3 out of 4 founders aren't around for their company's IPO. And a post-IPO founder, on average, is $3 million annual compensation. So that founding CEO, that founding president, like the founding president of Tesla, like the founding CEO of Groupon, they're not there to reap the rewards that come afterward. And it's because, in my opinion, they stick to that grind that they have to be on, that blood, sweat, and tears. And they never learn how to shift away from that and get more towards I'm defining the vision and I'm communicating it to an expanding team. And so that's what I help people do. But whether I work with you or not, that's the shift in mindset, to get actually out of the day-to-day building of something and into visioning and communicating. So, and thank you.
You are so welcome. I think that's an excellent point, something to write down, take notes, and keep in mind. Chao, briefly, what would you like to leave our audience with?
Yeah. Well, first, this is a fantastic way to spend a Tuesday morning, and I certainly think that what I've heard here, it can definitely be taken home and put into practice. And I'm definitely looking forward to hearing about what's talked about on future shows. So I guess directly to the business owners and to the consumers out there that are kind of wondering what's going to come of all of this, as certainly in this spring, we didn't really even think that this would last past the summer, but here we are in the middle of summer, and the number of cases are still going up in some areas. New York and Governor Cuomo, they certainly seem to have gotten everything under control, fingers crossed. And so it kind of just, to me, is a microcosm of sort of the way that different strategies can have wildly different approaches. And I'm certain that different countries around the world that have dealt with this problem haven't all taken the exact same solution. In fact, I'm sure they haven't. And so that kind of tells me that almost in every situation there's a need to bring in an expert, or to even just consult an expert to say, okay, based on all of the parameters that we're seeing and all the metrics, what is the right solution? And so, I think to all of you out there that are wondering, in my business, in my personal life, what's going to change, what's going to, stay the same, what's going to be better or worse. There is a solution out there, right? That's sort of the kind of the genius of the human mind, is that, we're able to sort of see abstract concepts where there may not be a physical representation of it. And so, yeah, I certainly think that it's about, finding the right resources in the right places. So I'm certainly very glad that, shows like this exist. And yeah, go and seek the advice, and if it doesn't work the first time, try again, with a different strategy.
I love it. Wonderful advice. And we learned a lot from you. I think what I took away is don't scope creep. I think that's my new favorite term now to all my clients. You're scope creeping. I'm sorry. Howard.
I'm loving that.
Don't laugh at me, Howard.
I'm not laughing at you at all. I'm appreciating. That's what I'm doing. This was really great. Lots of great information here. And again, businesses just need to be, I guess, open in the sense of how they're communicating. Hopefully open with their doors. Hopefully open, if definitely open with their computer monitors or phone screens. But you need to be able to communicate the right way with your customers and your future customers. And there are a lot of strategies that can be implemented to do that. But this was a great period of time, at least early on, to really refocus what you are as a business and how you want to operate and what needs you may have to do so. So again, it's the best use of time is helping others right now. So that's, like, I think all of us spent this last hour really helping your listeners and viewers on some real opportunities for growth. So that is really, that's time well spent.
Thank you. I'm glad everyone is enjoying this Tuesday morning. Ken, what do you have for us?
First of all, I want to say thank you, Sharif, very much for inviting me to your show. And Alex, Howard, and Chao, I appreciate everything that you've had to say, and I've learned myself. And hopefully somehow, some way our paths would cross. That would be awesome, because I think we'd bring a lot of value to each other. So I would say that, for businesses, and it really doesn't matter how big the business is. In terms of what we're dealing with today and where that's taking us in the future, I think the important thing is always to be very specific about what you are trying to do as a business, whether it's providing a service, selling a product, or like Chao and I are very much similar when we're all business to business, so how we can solve another business's problems. But be specific and continue to be focused on that specificity, because that's where scope creep gets. But be focused on solving that one specific thing that you came to the clients you're trying to reach or the clients that you have. Be very specific about that, and be focused on that. And then I think we'd all agree that you have to test what you are executing on to understand what's working and what isn't working. And again, it doesn't really matter if you're selling an online course, whether you're selling consulting services or you're selling $1 million service or product. It doesn't matter. You have to test what you decided what you're going to go do, how you're going to be focused on that, and then bring in data from what you tested on, and then tweak. Very rarely do we walk out with a campaign right out of the gate and everything works, everything's perfect. That's a fairyland, right? That doesn't happen. Anybody who tells you they can do that, run. Okay? So test, bring in the data, and then just go back through the process and refine. And then in today's world, you got to talk about the elephant in the room. Why are consumers doing what they're doing? How is that changing? And what is it that you can do to pivot to be specific, focused, test, understanding what their challenges are as a business? Because believe me, in 8 months, their challenges are going to change when the environment changes. Mm-hmm. So that's my advice, is just to be specific, focused, test, and just keep running it through the process, and then optimize. And it doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter what you're selling or the service that you're doing. You will get to a point of success if you stay focused on what your original intent was.
I love it. I think that's wonderful advice. And one of the things that I love that you mentioned is the aspect of test. As a business consultant, one of the things that I run into is entrepreneurs or business owners who are just starting out and don't have any budget. They have no money. They have no resources. And I always tell them, like they say, people try to be funny, but don't quit your day job. Don't just leave your job in the hopes that this is going to take off tomorrow, because then what you wind up doing is what I call a Hail Mary pass, where it's like, this has to work because I have no money left. But if you do that, then you don't have a budget for testing. It's just like, I'll try that. That didn't work. Now you're out of business. So excellent advice from all of our guests. I appreciate it. I love it. I hope all of you decide to return to the Roundtable Talk Show. I hope one way or another our paths will cross. I know Ken and I are going to have that meeting with Keurig about my national commercial TV spot. So our paths are going to cross again. But everybody else, definitely come back. I want to thank you all for being a guest on today's episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. And I especially have to thank everyone who tuned in to watch the show. I definitely appreciate your support. But don't just support me. Don't just support the show. Please support our guests. That's why I put their information, their websites, what they do in the post on Facebook, so that you can visit their websites. So visit their websites, contact them, follow them on social media. And if you send that message, please be sure to tell them Sharifa Hardy says hi. Until tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, if you are interested in being a guest, please visit the website at asksharifa.com. Bye now. Everyone have a blessed day.